Welcome to another WA Grand Lodge podcast here at the Media Centre at Subiaco. I'd like to welcome you. My name is Peter Kirwan. I'm the Grand Master of Western Australia. And as a special guest we have with us this afternoon is the Grand Master of Queensland, Most Worshipful Brother Paul Holland. Welcome, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It's a great pleasure to be here, mate. We've been talking about doing this sort of thing for some time, and it's fantastic that you've taken the opportunity to do this. I think it's marvellous.
Yeah, I think it's our media team up here was pretty anxious to see whether we can get another Grand Master on board, and I'm glad you were doing. We've spoken quite often about these podcasts, and it's great to see you and up and about. So we missed each other at the Victorian installation, as that was obviously COVID-19 restricted. So it was a pity that things are changing at the moment.
Yes, it was a real shame.
But
it's this whole thing's affected everyone in different ways, haven't they? And certainly the Victorians have been dealt a bad hand. You know, whether they caused it themselves or not, it's been pretty chaotic down there. And I applaud them for running that truncated ceremony.
Yeah.
They did a pretty good job with that, I thought. They're normally quite a precision team down there, and they designed it pretty well. And we've designed a similar ceremony up here for this month because we have our Grand Proclamation on.
Yep.
It's actually supposed to be on this weekend coming, but it's going to be the end of the month. And I commissioned a truncated proclamation ceremony to be prepared, a bit like the Victorian one. And I just said my instructions were, I don't care if it's pretty as long as it's legal. And so we're cutting out a lot of the ceremonial stuff, of course, and we're only having those people involved who need to be there on the day, because we're still not sure we weren't sure what numbers would be like when we sat down to plan it. So we're planning it for to be run with. We could run it in with 20 people in the room, but if we had 50 people in the room, it'd be quite comfortable.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that Victoria is getting this second wave because they're getting penalised for having the Collingwood football team there, so they probably deserve it.
Poor old Collingwood.
Yeah, well, not really.
I'm not a Collingwood fan, but they've certainly brought something down on themselves, haven't they? Whether it's Collingwood or something else.
Yeah.
But I hark back to some of the messaging I've been doing over here, and it's a very personal thing for me. I'm a bit of a student of history, and I sort of look back on things. And I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother's brother, who I never met, he died in the 1940s. He married quite late, and he and his wife only had one child, a little Moya, and what make her my cousin once removed or something or other, whatever it is. And little one was born in 1917, and she died in 1919 at age 2 with the Spanish flu.
Oh.
And the family never got over it. They talked about it, well, not to this day because they're all gone, but certainly when I was a young fellow, it was still a topic of conversation. And, of course, that happened. The second and third waves of that flu happened, of course, because not just because medicine was a bit rudimentary back in those days, and it was, but because people, took it too easy. They expected it to be all over, and they didn't pay attention. So they weren't cautious, and they copped that killer second wave. And here in Australia, we got a third wave, which is what happened in 1919.
Yeah, it was pointed out to me when I suspended the Masonic activities here in WA. The last time we did that was actually the polio outbreak in the late 50s. Yeah. That people tend to forget the polio, but they refer straight to the Spanish flu, which is more of a worldwide pandemic that killed a lot of people. But I think the social side of the country was affected probably in similar status than lockdowns to the polio, because everybody was panicking about that. But how's the Grand Lodge of Queensland? So
sorry, mate.
How are you going in Queensland now? What are you looking at about what dates you think you might be up and running again? We were talking previously about it, but would you like to tell the podcast what you're doing?
Yeah. I think most of us reacted at about the same time 3 months ago, and most of us had the same sort of timeline in mind. But of course, the different states have progressed at different rates. And I cancelled all Masonic activity until the 30th of June. And I've been doing weekly messaging to all the brethren. I put out a newsletter every Monday and try to keep them up to date with my way of thinking. And I've been urging caution all the way through. As of Monday, my newsletter this week extended the shutdown during July. Although I've softened it up a bit. I've said, look, some lodges may have an absolute urgent need to meet to do something. I said, don't put in for a dispensation just to go back and ballot for someone or pass your accounts. You can do that other ways. But if you have an urgent need for something, let us know. And as long as you can follow COVID safe guidelines and we can be sure of what you're doing, then a short meeting in July with no festive board may be possible. Now, there are one or two that are going to pick up on that. But my way of thinking is that that come August, we should be in a position to allow lodges to go back and meet face-to-face, albeit possibly with social distancing, whether that's 4 square metres, 2 square metres, 1.5 apart, whatever it is. Most of the lodges, particularly in metropolitan areas, we have some big centres, and a lot of the lodges aren't huge. And I don't think the size of the room will be a concern. Although I did have some amateur mathematicians that were getting hold of me a month ago, telling me how many square metres they had in their lodge room and how many people they could fit. And I had to disappoint them by saying, "Well, don't count the floor."
Pavement.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
You can't count the floor. So I think you said something similar.
Yeah.
And so I think August, Peter, will see lodges go back in some truncated form. I have warned them that unless things are lifted like they've lifted in your state, where social distancing and those sorts of things aren't a factor, if we still carry around social distancing, then really degree work in its traditional form will be very hard to do. So I've said to lodges, if you do go back, plan for the next 3 months without degree work if you possibly can. If we raise the boom and you can do it, then that's a bonus. But go back, do your preps, do your exemplifications or whatever you need to do some more education, and prepare for degree work after 3 months or so. Now that's a worst case scenario, and I hope I can go back and say, well, everything's okay, you go for it, like you've been able to. But I can't guarantee that. And I'd rather give them a real scenario rather than promise them something and then have to renege on it.
Yeah, and that's the reason why when I did the original suspension was till on further notice, because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And
exactly right.
Even when the Premier came out and told us we're going to phase 5 and all the restrictions lifted, that totally surprised us, because we'd already put in place a formal plan to go to every lodge and social distance, signage, cleaning before and after, no festive boards in the first stage. Then when you do have it, you need to be properly trained and so on. But the Premier beat us to the punch, and just as we were about to release that, he comes out and says, July 18, you can start. So I just turned around and said, well, there's no point putting the lodges through.
It was remarkably good, Peter. I saw that and I was quite astounded, because we've been operating under the same way of thinking that you have, and we've been working on COVID safe guidelines, how to conduct work at a distance, all that sort of stuff. If you are going to conduct festive boards, how you have to do it, what accreditation you have to have in terms of food preparation, all that stuff. Deep cleaning of centres before we go back, continual cleaning and re-cleaning of centres. So we're still expecting that to be the case, but with your example, it was a huge surprise.
So how are your numbers going? Have you got an increase or heaps of people sitting in the wings coming along joining? Or because I know we had several prospective members sitting there waiting, but we've had more come in while we've been in suspension.
It's interesting. I don't have a solid answer for you there. My sense is that yes, we do have quite a few people waiting to join. It's interesting, isn't it? Because in the past, I think most jurisdictions, this part of everywhere, try to, as soon as a person shows interest, you try to get him through the door as fast as you can, in the right possible way. You don't like to delay them. Think, oh well, if he cools his heels, he'll change his mind. Well, actually, we found the opposite. That the more people have had an opportunity to sit back and think about it, and we've been inviting them to participate in our Zoom meetings too, prospects, so that they can meet the guys and have a chit chat and that type of thing. And I get the sense that we haven't lost anyone, put it that way, in terms of prospects walking away. And the anecdotal evidence I'm getting from lodges is that as soon as we give them the green light, they'll have people they can bring on board. Now, the bit I don't know is what damage has been done by being closed for 3 months in terms of existing members and people who perhaps lived and breathed for this sort of stuff and perhaps drifted away. I don't know that until we actually go back and get a sense of it. I've been at pains to point out to people when they've come back to me and made noises like their throats had been cut. How can we exist without our masonry, and how can we do this and how can we do that? Point of view I have is that whilst this is very important in our lives, it's a pastime. It's a hobby.
Exactly.
This isn't a job. This isn't family. It's not life and death. It's wonderful, absolutely fantastic, but it's a pastime. And if you can't go for 3 or 4 months without that, then it's probably playing a part in your life which is probably a bit too much. I always try to say to people, make this part of the reality of your life in the proper way. It's got to be a component to your life, a really valuable component, but you can't overdo it. And a lot of people, I do a thing when I'm teaching my management students. I do a thing called Dish of Life. And I get them to sort of imagine they're sitting in front of a table with all these big plates and bowls on it, and the ingredients are the ingredients of your life. And the big bowl of rice in front of you, and that's work. And then there's all these other things that you need to eat, including your dish, to make you healthy and happy. And quite frankly, masonry isn't a giant bowl. Masonry can be very powerful, and it's a bit like a hot spice. You need pinches of it. If you grab a big handful of it and throw it in the dish, you're going to spoil the taste of it, maybe burn your mouth and make you sick. And so it's a matter of finding how much some people can take hot and some people can't take hot. Some people like hot curries, some people like mild curries. You need to find the right amount of this and your other pastimes to bring into your life to make it happy and wonderful and valuable. But if you take a great handful, big scoop of chili powder or something and throw it in the middle of your food, it's not going to taste too good. Yeah. And I think some people take big handfuls of masonry and throw it into their lives, expecting it to be better, and it's not.
Yeah, I think I've described it, I think, before. Freemasonry is a supplementary ingredient to your life. It shouldn't be an essential ingredient to your life. It's a life supporting.
And Peter, I understand. We in both of our jurisdictions we have wonderful senior masons who perhaps have lost family and perhaps they're widowers and their mates form the backbone of their life and they love getting out every night of the week. I understand that. I get that, and I'm not directing my comments at those folks, but I certainly see lots of guys in their 20s and 30s and 40s who join. Sometimes not really understanding what's going on, expecting some wake up and find unicorns at the bottom of the garden or something the night after they do their first degree, and are disappointed when they're not there, and so they drink the Masonic Kool-Aid, I think, a bit and get a bit carried away. People who are passionate about their masonry are wonderful. I think that's fantastic. But part and parcel of what we should do as senior masons is to do what you've just said. Help people put this in context of their lives. Yeah. Show them what it's really about and show them how it can improve their lives, not overwhelm their lives or take over their lives.
That's actually
and I think
point.
We lose people because they get overwhelmed.
The deck also relates to something that I can tell you about that we're finding here. We're getting our lodges to come back online, but we are still getting a number of lodge members that are not going to come back themselves because they are worried about the COVID-19. they're also got family members that are ill or they've got an underlying illness. They're not going to put anything at risk. And we have to encourage them to make sure that they do that, and lodges themselves are going to have to cover those without any adverse effect towards those individual members, because, you know, you've got guys that have got their wives suffering from cancer or they're recovering from cancer. They're not going to risk it until there's a vaccine out there. And we also have to highlight that if you're slightly ill, if you've got a flu, don't come to lodge. So all those health factors still stay in force. It's a new life. Until we've got a vaccine, this is a new life we're going to have to live.
Peter, you're absolutely correct. I wrote on Monday in my sort of weekly newsletter this week that I don't want to go back to the good old days of hygiene that I've seen in lodge rooms around the place, where effectively, you know, people drag themselves out of their deathbeds to come along and do a charge, or people drag themselves along with a heavy dose of the flu or a cold and cough and sneeze and splutter up in the north and south all evening and all over everyone else. And you know, with trying to be as genteel as possible, some of the old boys that get out there and make use of the convenience, don't wash their hands, and then come back and dive into the festive board. Yeah. And we've all seen this in the past and just shrugged. Well, I'm sorry, that's over. That's done. Yeah. That will never happen again. Yeah, and I think, so the new normal for us, certainly hygiene-wise, we've got to pay really close attention to things like personal hygiene and just look after ourselves more than we have. I don't know why people haven't done this properly in the past, but it's almost like being an afterthought. Yes. Well, it can't anymore. Yeah. And your example of, you know, having people at home at risk and coming to lodge, I'm sure we'll find that too, Peter. Yep. And I've been telling my lodges that what I'm hoping that they do is that they take the best of what we've been discovering during this lockdown in terms of what's possible to do online, how connected we can be, and that when they come back, that the Masonic month can be a blended month where they have their face-to-face meeting, but also they're having meetings for admin purposes, for social catch-ups, even for education. And it becomes part of the normal lodge calendar, and then there you get that variety that people are seeking. Yep. Well, I think we're actually going to get pretty close to coming to the end of our time at the moment. So, sure, mate. What I might do is that if there's any specific thing, but before we do end up, please, on behalf of the West Australian Freemasons, I would like to pass on our best wishes to yourself, to your lovely wife, thank you, and all the brethren of Queensland, and hopefully and their families, that they all stay safe. And if you guys ever need any help, please give us a yell and see what we can do. Some of the things we're trying over here, I think we're going to keep our Zoom meetings or the podcast going. Anything else we can give you help with. We are a fraternal organisation. It's international. We're more than willing to help out. And this is just one step to what we're doing now. But please pass on our best wishes to all your families and your brethren, and we look forward. So if you want to finish up, I'll let you go. Go for it. Yeah, thanks very much, Peter. And look, the same from my point of view. It's a delight to be able to speak to you today. And a catchphrase I like these days is think fraternal, not tribal. And we have to think as a fraternity in this country. We've got too much in common, and it's wonderful when we do get a chance to catch up at the major events and talk, and we realise we have far more in common than we have in differences. And the ability to support one another, I think, is really very important, and that's going to be increasingly important, I think, as the years roll on. So I really appreciate your thoughts, and please pass on to your brethren the same from us. And to you and your family, Peter, and to everyone else, to Danny and all of your senior folks over there. And I trust that they're all well and travelling well, and that all your lodges and all your brethren continue to enjoy their masonry. And you're pioneering here because you're the first. You're the first to go back, the first to enjoy all of this again, albeit in a changed world. And hopefully, the recipe for masonry that you pick up on, this whole idea of going back to our face-to-face fraternity, but use the best of the world that we've discovered. I keep telling people that in every unexpected circumstance, there's often a gift, even if it's something grim like this. There's a gift, and the gift we've been given is the opportunity to sort of sit back and actually think and not just keep sleepwalking.
Yep.
And I think that's been a real gift for us all, and we should continue doing that.
Yep, and I think actually the New Zealanders beat us to the punch. I think they're actually back up and running.
Oh, they did too. Yeah,
so you can't forget the Kiwis.
In a way, they're part of our little group, aren't they, Graham and his troops? And other times I bite my tongue. I try to not treat them like a seventh state. Yeah. So yes, they did go back early, and they're doing. Graham's doing a fine job over there.
And hopefully,
but certainly in Australia, you're leading the way.
And if when I think the other Grandmasters get to see this podcast, they might be a bit jealous, and we can actually expand this in the future to have some of our Grandmasters conferences doing it this way and let other people involved.
Peter, I think it's sensible. You think of every other avenue of our working lives. Like I do a lot of work in education and business, and they couldn't exist now without their online board meetings and their catch ups and stuff. And they all live in a blended world. It's just that we don't.
Yep.
And Freemasonry should.
Yep.
We're bringing fellas along to our lodge meetings who spend their days, talking to their colleagues across the world and in Zoom meetings and all sorts of things. And then we bring them into a lodge and lock the door. And while that's charming and quaint, it's not the way the world works. And I really do think that you're right. I think it would benefit Freemasonry across Australasia if we and the other senior folks in our jurisdiction spend a bit more time talking with each other.
Yeah. And I was just thinking that you got to think outside the box, but you end up talking to somebody on a box. So
you do.
But
you do indeed.
Well, again, I think we better wind up at this stage. And thank you again, Most Worshipful Brother Paul. Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to see you face to face at some stage. But if not,
that'd be wonderful, Peter. That'd be great. And looking forward to it. And please give my best to all the folks over there.
Great. Thanks, Paul. I'll catch you later.